The little girl carried the empty cardboard box as if it were made of glass, holding it carefully against her chest while the rain soaked through her thin sweater. She was only 9 years old, but there was something painfully adult in the way she walked through the crowded city street, keeping her eyes lowered and counting every step toward home. Nobody paid much attention to her. To everyone else, she was just another poor child collecting discarded boxes behind expensive stores. But one man noticed. A billionaire who had spent his entire life surrounded by luxury watched her quietly from the back seat of his black car, and what he saw that evening would change not only her life, but his own. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can give someone a second chance, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us bring more stories of compassion, courage, and unexpected second chances. The girl's name was Mia, and she lived with her mother and 6-year-old brother in a tiny apartment above an old repair shop on the edge of the city. Their home was so small that the kitchen, living room, and sleeping area seemed to belong to the same narrow space. The paint on the walls had begun peeling years ago, the window frame was cracked, and during heavy rain they placed pots beneath the ceiling to catch the water. There were nights when Mia pretended she was not hungry because there was not enough food for everyone. Her mother always tried to hide her exhaustion, but Mia had learned to recognize the silence that came after unpaid bills, the way her mother stared at the kitchen table when there was almost nothing left in the cupboard, and the way she smiled whenever Mia asked if everything would be all right. That smile always meant things were worse than she admitted. Mia's father had disappeared from their lives several years earlier. After losing his job, he had left one morning promising he would return after finding work, but he never did. Her mother had worked wherever she could, cleaning offices, washing dishes, folding clothes at a small laundry, and sometimes caring for elderly people. But after an injury made it difficult for her to work long hours, the family fell deeper into poverty. Mia began helping without being asked. She learned which stores threw away sturdy boxes, which bakeries sometimes discarded unsold bread, and which market owners allowed her to take bruised fruit at the end of the day. But there was one reason she collected empty boxes. Every evening, Mia carried them home and placed them carefully beside her little brother's bed. She was building something. Not a house for herself. Not a business. A tiny bedroom. Her brother Leo loved drawing. He filled scraps of paper with pictures of airplanes, trees, animals, and houses with enormous windows. But because their apartment was so cramped, he had nowhere to keep his drawings. His little mattress was pushed against the wall, and whenever Mia and her mother moved around the room, his papers were folded and placed into bags so they would not be damaged. Mia had decided that she would make him a special place. She used empty boxes to create shelves. She cut cardboard into small rectangles and decorated them with crayons. She planned to build a miniature desk for Leo. She even found an old piece of blue fabric and imagined turning it into a curtain. It was a childish dream born inside an adult-sized struggle. And that was exactly what the billionaire saw. His name was Daniel Carter, a 42-year-old technology investor whose company occupied an entire glass tower in the center of the city. Magazines described him as brilliant, disciplined, and extraordinarily wealthy. His name appeared on charity foundations, investment reports, and business awards. He owned several houses, drove cars that cost more than most people earned in a decade, and had access to almost anything money could buy. Yet every evening, when he returned to his enormous mansion, he walked through rooms that felt strangely empty. Daniel was a single father. His daughter, Sophie, was 8 years old. Her mother had died when Sophie was very young, and Daniel had never fully recovered from the loss. He loved his daughter fiercely, but his grief had made him overprotective. He hired tutors, nurses, drivers, and security guards. He filled Sophie's room with beautiful things because he believed that if she had everything, perhaps she would never feel the emptiness he carried. But Sophie did feel it. And Daniel knew it. That rainy evening, Daniel had been returning from a business meeting when traffic slowed near a shopping district. Through the window, he noticed Mia walking behind a restaurant carrying a stack of empty boxes almost as tall as her shoulders. She struggled to keep them from falling. A delivery worker nearly bumped into her, and she quickly stepped aside, apologizing even though she had done nothing wrong. Daniel looked away. Then he looked back. Something about her bothered him. Not because she was collecting trash. Because she handled those boxes with care. His driver continued down the street, but Daniel asked him to stop. He watched Mia pick up another box from beside a dumpster. She checked it carefully, brushed away the rainwater, and smiled faintly before placing it with the others. Daniel could not explain why, but he asked the driver to follow her. He expected to discover something simple. Instead, he discovered a secret. Mia walked nearly 40 minutes through the rain, past bright restaurants and luxury apartments, until she reached an old building with a broken sign above the entrance. She climbed 3 flights of stairs carrying the boxes. Daniel remained in the car. He watched through the windshield as the little girl disappeared inside. For several minutes, he told himself to leave. Then he saw her mother come rushing downstairs. She hugged Mia. Mia handed her the boxes. Her mother looked at them and began crying. Daniel could not hear what they were saying through the rain, but he could see the mother pressing her hands against her face. Then Mia pointed toward the window upstairs. Daniel followed her gaze. Behind the glass, a small boy was watching. He was smiling. Mia had brought the boxes home for him. Something inside Daniel broke open. He remembered his own daughter. Sophie had a bedroom larger than Mia's entire apartment. She had shelves full of toys. She had clothes she had worn only once. She had books she had never opened. And yet, 3 days earlier, Daniel had found her sitting alone on the floor, surrounded by expensive gifts, asking why her father was always busy. For the first time, Daniel understood that perhaps he had been giving his daughter everything except what she actually needed. Time. That night, Daniel returned home unusually quiet. Sophie was sitting at the dining table drawing. He sat beside her. She looked surprised. Daniel asked what she was drawing. She showed him a picture of 3 people holding hands beneath a crooked blue umbrella. There was Sophie, her mother, and Daniel. Her mother had been gone for years. Daniel stared at the drawing until his eyes filled with tears. Sophie noticed. She placed her small hand over his. And for the first time in years, Daniel allowed himself to cry in front of his daughter. The next morning, he returned to the neighborhood where he had seen Mia. He did not send an assistant. He did not call his foundation. He simply went himself. But Mia was not outside. Daniel searched nearby stores and eventually learned that the girl came almost every afternoon. When she appeared, she was carrying a small plastic bag containing 2 pieces of bread. Daniel followed from a distance. This time, he saw her enter a community center. Inside, volunteers were distributing food to families. Mia took one small package and immediately placed it into her bag. She did not eat. She took it home. Daniel followed again. But before he could approach, he noticed something alarming. A man was standing across the street watching Mia. The man appeared nervous. He followed her for several blocks. Daniel immediately became concerned. Mia eventually noticed him too. She quickened her pace. The man followed. Daniel stepped out of his car and moved between them. The stranger stopped, looked at Daniel, and quickly walked away. Mia stood frozen. She did not know who Daniel was. She only knew that a tall man in an expensive coat had suddenly appeared between her and someone who had frightened her. Daniel did not force her to explain. He simply walked with her until she reached home. There, he finally learned the truth. Mia's mother was seriously behind on rent. The landlord had given them only a few days to leave. Her injury had worsened, and she could no longer work enough hours to support the family. The empty boxes were not just for Leo's room. Mia had been collecting them because she planned to sell the stronger cardboard to a recycling center. She was trying to earn enough money to help her mother. Daniel stood silently as he looked around the tiny apartment. There were no expensive possessions. No television worth mentioning. No decorations. But there were hundreds of Leo's drawings. Airplanes covered one wall. Animals covered another. And above the little boy's mattress was a cardboard shelf Mia had carefully built from the boxes she collected. On that shelf sat 3 crayons, a small toy airplane, and a photograph of the family from happier years. Daniel understood something that wealth had never taught him. People could own almost nothing and still possess enormous love. That evening, Daniel offered help. Mia's mother hesitated. She did not want charity. She had spent years surviving without asking anyone for anything. So Daniel made her an offer instead. His foundation needed workers for a community program that provided meals and supplies to struggling families. The position was administrative and part-time, with flexible hours. He told her that her experience organizing donations and helping families made her qualified. It was not a handout. It was an opportunity. She accepted. But Daniel did not stop there. He arranged for the family to move into a safe apartment through a housing program his foundation had already been developing. He paid for Mia's mother's medical treatment. He made sure Leo received school supplies. And then he did something that surprised everyone. He brought Mia and Leo to his foundation's community workshop and showed them a room filled with cardboard, wood, fabric, paint, and tools. He told them they could build anything they wanted. Mia built a small reading corner for Leo. Leo built an airplane. Daniel watched them work. And slowly, something changed inside him. He began spending less time in his office and more time with Sophie. He stopped answering emails during dinner. He attended her school projects. He listened when she talked. He learned which stories made her laugh.